everyone, it's Daisy and welcome to Wildflowers.
Hey guys, it's Sophie. Thanks for joining us. Episode 10 of season 1. We just want to keep you guys in the loop, so we have one more episode after this before we conclude season 1. Next week, we're going to have our first guest on. We're super excited about that. Then we're going to take a little break. We're going to come back. Whole new start on season 2. We have a bunch of guests we're going to bring on. We're super excited about that. So our website's up. Subscribe to our newsletter because we're going to be sending a lot of information there. Check our Instagram. We don't want you guys to miss out on what's to come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're really excited about where we're going to take the podcast in season 2. It's nothing totally new, but we're going in a little bit of a different direction that feels really authentic to the whole brand that we're trying to create behind Wildflowers. So stay tuned. Don't just think that we're never going to post a podcast again because we will be back. But we just want to take the adequate amount of time to make sure that we're creating something really high quality for you guys.
Definitely. And so this episode, so season 1 has been so much about communications, emotions, relationships. We've touched about romantic relationships. We touched about relationship with parents. We touched about relationships kind of with yourself, right? And what are we missing? Friendships. Friendships for me, and I think for Daisy, have been a very difficult gray area to navigate in your 20s when you're growing so much as a person with a lot of friends. Maybe you met in college when you're completely different than you are now, or high school, and kind of navigating that to understand who are your friends, what does it mean to be a friend at this age of your life, what kind of needs do you really need to meet of a friend? Is it okay if you just hang out with a friend once a month? Is that a friendship, or do you have to give them more? So we kind of just want to talk through that to help understand and navigate in the world of friendships. What does it mean? And also, when it's not right to be friends with someone anymore. When have you outgrown somebody? And when do you need to not feel guilty? Because that's just part of life. There's so much we want to talk about. So let's get into it. And maybe, Daisy, we can start off. I can ask you, what does friendship mean to you?
Friendship is such an interesting thing because I think it really just means different things depending on where you are in your life, right? So for me right now, I don't really know what friendship means to me. I think it's, finding people who are really just aligned with what direction I'm looking to go in life, and who's going to help me build up my dreams, and I'm going to help build up their dreams. Not a super clear answer, but that's what it means to me.
Yeah, I think that your dreams also, so on the topic of dreams, when you're friends with somebody at an earlier part of your life, what you're looking to build in your own life is different. When you're 18, 23, 21, you probably want someone who goes out with you. You want someone who's going to hype you up.
Right.
Let's go to this pregame on the weekend. That's what I look for in my friends during college. Where can we go out? Who's going to join me going out, right? Fast forward a few years in your 20s, the things that you're trying to build in your life shift. Your interests shift. The direction you want to go in shift.
Totally.
So naturally, when this is happening, the people around you are going to shift too. But this feels so weird because it sometimes doesn't make sense. Why is a friend who I was so close with when I was 21, I'm not vibing with anymore at 25? And it could be really confusing of am I not putting in enough effort? But I don't think that's the case. I think it's just our interest and needs change. And just like any relationship, if that friendship does not evolve concurrently with your growth, it might not be as strong as it used to be.
Yeah. How would you say your interests have shifted since you were 21 years old?
Well, I think that up until I was 25, I went out every single weekend in New York City. I spent a lot of time, honestly, dating, chasing boys at first and then girls. I think I just spent so much time living in not the sceney world, but just the superficial world, caring a lot about the clothes I wore, caring a lot about all these things that don't really resonate deeply with me.
Okay.
I think at 25, I kind of had an inner growth more. I started getting in touch with the philosophy I really like to read, or the interests I really like to just do on the weekends that don't involve drinking. I stopped drinking recently as much as I used to, and I stopped going out as much as I used to. I stopped realizing I'm going to spend $80 at dinner every weekend, blowing a paycheck. I feel like my needs shifted, so naturally the friends who I were doing all these things were with from a few years ago, I stopped seeing them as much.
Yeah. And that can be confusing because I think sometimes it feels one-sided. This growth is happening for you. Maybe this change isn't happening for your friends.
That's so hard because it's like it doesn't feel fair if you have a friend who's all of a sudden there's changing, right? So it's like, I'm not say like, let's just say like we're friends, right? And all of a sudden you're having this epiphany, you're feeling good, you're gonna start working out all the time, you're gonna stop drinking, you don't want to go out anymore. But we've been best friends for 5 years. Is it wrong of you that you want to stop going out with me? Should you kind of like wing woman me if I'm single? Do you have a responsibility for you that kind of deviates from where you want to grow as a person? Do you have to kind of compromise? What do you think?
So this is where I think friendships and relationships differ a bit. Maybe, I don't think you should compromise who you are for anyone. Not even a relationship. I think sometimes there's like micro compromises you can make for the larger picture. But with friendships, it feels complicated because if you're really gonna, if you are hitting that age where you realize I want more for my life, I want to go a different direction, I don't want to just do these superficial things, or I don't want to do these things that don't feel innate to who I am, why would you need to change that about yourself to maintain a friendship?
Yeah, no, I agree. I guess I wonder, like, it feels that there's a sense of obligation feels so strongly in friendships. Yeah. And this is something it's like the guilt that comes in of like, oh, my friend wants to get dinner with me. I don't really want to see them. And 2 years ago, I used to be like, oh, I'm going to go. I don't want to go. I used to go to so many things that I didn't actually want to go to because I felt like I had to go. And I think that you kind of realize that you don't need to do things that you don't want to do anymore.
Totally. And this is no one's fault. I think this is just a part of growing and a part of growing up. And it's really bizarre, honestly, because your desires change as you get older. And how do you tell someone that in a nice way?
Do you think that there's protocol to ending a friendship, or do you think it's better for it to kind of just fizzle out? I've definitely had friendships that have fizzled out.
I think naturally that can happen. I think it just depends on the relationship or the friendship that you have, because ultimately it comes down, is this causing positive things for you? Is this causing negative things for you in your life? Like, what impact does this friendship have on your life or friendships?
So do you think that, like, if you feel like you don't want to be friends with someone anymore, right? You realize you stopped hanging out with them. Do you think that you need to go get lunch with them and tell them I don't want to be friends anymore? That feels so awkward.
Well, I think that does feel really awkward. And I think that it's up to you. Like, you can try to have a conversation around, I've changed a lot. My entire identity has changed. But I don't know it's complicated because how do you explain that to someone?
I think some things are better left unsaid.
Yeah, I
maybe.
agree. Yeah.
I think, like, if there's something you need to say to this person, okay, go meet them for coffee. And, like, I'm bothered by this, and I just feel like we're not aligned anymore. But if you both are just growing separately, I think that's life, right? Like, there are so many people that this has happened with. And honestly, some days I'll wake up and I'm like, oh my God, I haven't talked to this person in 2 years. What is happening? It's a little disillusioning.
Well, I think there's a component of it too that naturally in life, even like with best friends you've had, you're going to grow out, and then maybe you'll grow back into each other if you find yourselves on the same path. I don't think the conception of the best friend that we had through growing up and through college is really applicable to everyday life. And I think that we try to apply that everyday life when we're trying to go after our careers, or we're trying to go after our relationship, or trying to build this particular type of life, particular type of routine, particular type of mental health, particular time of self-growth. It's not really going to suit you. And this could be wrong, but I don't think the idea of having a best friend is going to suit a lifestyle where you're trying to grow and be your best self. And that probably came out wrong, but just the idea of, like, you were in school and you have this best friend and you do everything together. And maybe that's the case, like, but when you get into a relationship, I feel like so much is taken up.
I think another thing that's really important to mention is if you're single, if you're not single, right? Because if you're single and your friend is in a relationship and you need more emotional support than your friend does because they're getting their cup filled up from their significant other, but you were so used to getting that love and support from your friend. That's very hard. I've had that happen to me. I've been the one on the other side of it. And I think I've also been in the one now when I'm in a relationship on the other side. So I don't think anyone's at fault here, but I think that it naturally, like, not all the time are your two friends gonna their paths are gonna change at the same times. If they do, great, but one person's always gonna be left hanging. And I think it's kind of on that person to take it up on themselves and maybe find new friends or kind of maybe figure out what they like. Because if you're going to sit there and kind of dwell and like look towards that friend to fill up your needs and like self-sabotage or whatever, you're not going to grow also.
Well, I think that's a good point, because I think a lot of the reason, kind of what I was just saying of like why you leave a friendship, is because the things you're doing together, they don't suit you anymore. They don't suit your needs. So your question was around like, do you think you should tell someone, hey, I'm actually like, I don't want to go out anymore, but that's all you do. I'm actually going to go do XYZ. You know, like, what's wrong? I don't know. What's wrong with that?
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I think it's just, if it can feel really guilty because we handle our friendships over our life with such care. And it feels really unnatural for friendships that have been so close to us to not meet our needs anymore. And you feel like it's like a family situation where like, I need to take care of this person no matter what. But if you aren't careful, you're going to realize you're putting yourself second. Right. And you have to put yourself first because it's your life. So I think it's really difficult in that sense.
I think within that, right, so you on one hand, you have the friendships where you're kind of just growing apart. The second part, you kind of have the friends who you still want to see, but you have to set some boundaries with because you're growing. Whether you're in a relationship or not, you're busy with your career, you're busy with your passion project, you're busy with whatever you're doing, but you still want to spend time with that friend, but that other friend is much more needy than you. This is where I think boundaries really come in. And I think of one example, it was our friend Erica's like birthday, I think a few months ago, and I was really just not feeling good that day. I was feeling really sad. Things were going on with my parents, whatever. And I remember I was like, I don't know if I should text her. Like, I told her I was going to go to the party. I just felt so guilty. And I was like, you know what? I know she's going to understand. I'm going to text her. And she did. And I think that 2 years ago, I would have went. I would have jeopardized my own mental health. I would have been scared to set a boundary with a friend because boundaries with friends didn't exist in most of my life. But setting that boundary with that friend, you realize, like you do in a relationship with your parents or with your significant other, that boundary gives you stronger foundation with you and this friend to say, hey, okay, now I know next time this friend can tell you how they feel, right? I think that the more honest you are with your friends, the more you communicate, the stronger you'll grow with them and the deeper the friendship will build.
Do you think as you get older, you want the friendships that you have or have had to grow in depth? Do you think you value like more deep friendships as you get older?
So I think a lot about like there's so many different types of friendships. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, like you need a friend who you go get coffee with and you need a friend who you go to the gym with. I personally don't want that. I think that anyone who I spend time with now, where I just am in my life, I want to have a real connection with. I want to talk about real things. I hate surface level conversation. I know that kind of sounds like everyone says that, but I just find that I've been doing, I think, so much. There's so much I want to talk about, whether we're talking about like contemplating life. What do you think about death? What do you think about, are you really happy at your job? What do you think about the fact that we're all stuck in a system in corporate America? What do you think about the fact that like that Rob DeSantis might run for president? Like, you know, like whatever, like I'm actually not that involved in politics, but you get what I mean. The point of talking about real things, not just like, oh my God, like let's go to brunch next weekend. I think that, I forgot what your question was, but yeah, I think it was, yes, I do value deep things. And I think a large part of that was, now that we got in a close relationship, I understood, or close relationship. I mean, yes, we're close, we're dating. Now that we got into a healthy, strong relationship, I saw what it meant to have a real connection with somebody else. Honestly, my bar went up a little higher in friendships. Right. Is that fair to do that?
Yeah, because your needs are getting met heavily by me. And I think a lot of the times, like when you're single and you have needs, you keep a lot of friends around because you want to get those needs met. No no harm or no hate to like those friends. Like you just don't know like the depth of needs that you have that can be met. And I think as soon as you get into a relationship, like you just said, those friends don't serve you anymore. And maybe you were never serving them. You know, it makes you really look back and say, what was this friendship? Was it a true relationship or a true friendship where we were serving each other and bringing each other both up? And when you see that's happening in your relationship, you do reevaluate a lot of your friendships and say, are these steady, strong foundation friendships that I want to continue with?
What about like jealous friends who are not happy for you? I think that there's a lot of that out there. There's a lot of friends who are not going to build you up. There's a lot of friends who are going to make you feel guilty.
Well, I think that's where it comes into play of like your 20s. You can be in such different places of your life. And sometimes it's like two walls next to each other. Like you really don't know how to communicate when you're in such different places of your life.
So talking about different places, right? It's like if you're somebody who's going through a life change, like for us, it was navigating our sexuality. All of a sudden, this huge life shift, I definitely felt a level of like, okay, I realize now that I'm coming off autopilot, I'm realizing who I really am, realizing I'm attracted to women, realizing I'm not this person I was 5 years ago. Naturally, I kind of think my friendships are going to shift. And I think that that's a really weird thing that happens when you're in a same-sex relationship, specifically because in a lot of same-sex relationships, you're close. I don't know. I don't want to generalize and say in a lot of same-sex relationships, you're closer with your partner. I don't know if that's true.
Well, there's the friend component.
There's that friend component.
For example, like in our relationship, like we get a lot of feminine energy from each other. So maybe we crave like hanging out with guys more just by the nature of it. So I think that's kind of the point you're trying to make is that if you're a woman dating a man, that means that maybe like you need to like, you want to be with your girlfriend so bad because you want like that female energy. Just from my experience, like that's kind of what I've seen. And that doesn't really apply to us. It's hard to relate to that.
Well, I think of like
I think a lot of like female friendships can be built off of that mutual understanding.
Yeah, that's where sometimes honestly I'm like, now that I have a girlfriend, I'm like, what's the difference in these relationships with friends besides the fact you don't hook up with them, right? It's like some of these female relationships are so deep emotionally and you rely on each other so much where the point I'm like, you rely on them more than your significant other. I'm like, is this healthy? What is this? This is like a relationship without a romance component, but in a way it's like there is romance because you're like obsessed with each other because I don't know, you're relying on them. I don't know, but it's this weird thing that I think for me, when I got into our relationship, I started just recognizing that and recognizing that that was not something that like I wanted to partake in anymore.
Well, I just think inherently like when you have an intimate relationship with someone like of the same sex, you start to see your relationships with that same sex differently when they can be so intimate. You start to think like, oh, like I have a girlfriend. Do you know what I mean? Like it can like shift the way you see some friendships.
Wait, what do you mean?
Meaning like what you just said of like female friendships inherently are so intimate. And when you have like your girlfriend, like that's who you're most intimate with. Like that's your best friend and like they're also a girl. So it's going to feel maybe weird to go get like that strong intimacy like with other friendships of that are girls.
Well, I definitely have experienced that. I definitely have experienced that when we first started dating. I think of like kind of not even knowing how to navigate female relationships at first because there was a level of I feel like I felt uncomfortable maybe. This is way when we first started dating because this is the first time I'd like really been romantic with another woman. I didn't really know how to go out there and then have a platonic friendship with a friend because in my mind I was overlapping. Okay, this is so confusing. I spent my whole life being friends with women. Now I have a girlfriend, but I have other friends who I do not think of that in that way. But your mind kind of mixes them and it gets this blurred line comes in of like, but do I like my friend? I'm like, no, I don't like my friend. But this is real.
Yeah, it's confusing. But it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, like I like this friend. It's just like it's like a part of your brain was missing your entire life and then like it's activated.
Yeah.
so it's like everything is like, it just doesn't, it's confusing because you've lived your entire life experiences, you've made these friendships, you've like built everything, but then this part of your brain's turned on and you're like, oh, why do I feel like weird?
Definitely. So like, what do you think, how often do you think you should hang out with a friend in order to be a real friendship?
I don't think that matters.
You don't think it matters how often you hang out with them?
No.
So what is,
I think you have to identify with,
like, what's the framework for a friendship at this age, 27, 29?
I think mutual understanding and respect for who each person is. And you might not want to like you might not be doing everything together. And I think at this age, friendships, like having healthy space for giving each other space to grow into your life and to have differences and to respect and understand those differences. 2, I think supporting and encouraging that person to be that person that they are and not projecting what you want about your life or what you need onto them and expecting them to meet all of your needs. I think as you get older, like expecting less from your friends, and I don't mean like in those big moments of like, I want you to be here for, really big moments, but I think day-to-day stuff.
I don't need to call you and confer with you before I do this small task at my house type thing.
Right.
I remember I used to text my friends every second of like, oh, I'm going to the grocery store. What should I get?
Right.
Well, now I probably text you that.
Yeah, right. So I forget what your initial question was of like how often.
Well, yeah, like kind of what is a friend? Because I think that's something I really we're struggling right now, like in our 20s. I don't really know what's a friend. I have friends who I see once a month. I have friends that I don't talk to, but I know they're my friends. And I kind of agree with what you said.
I was kind of talking about like old friendships, like friendships that like you were really close at a period in your life and then you kind of are in different periods of your life, but like you still like mutually respect and love each other, but you know that you're just not going to be hanging out all the time.
Right.
Whereas like with new friends, I think it's kind of the same thing too, though. It's like we like to connect and talk about these certain things, or like we have this thing in common. So like, let's check in on each other. Let's do this. Let's do that. But I think it just comes down to is like not having the responsibility to carry someone else's emotions for them.
Yeah. I will say making new friends is weird.
Oh, in your like late 20s, it definitely is.
It's so weird.
How do you think it's weird?
Because it's kind of like, I feel like it's like dating.
It is.
It's like dating. It's like,
yeah.
Hey, I like you. And you're like, let's hang out. But you kind of have to be vulnerable. I think if you're struggling to make friends, new friends, it requires a level of vulnerability kind of to say like, hey, let's hang out. I think naturally that can feel kind of weird. I think especially when you're younger, you don't really have to expressly communicate to someone to be friends. It's more just assumed. Now, when you're an adult, you have to expressly, not ask, but like tell someone. Like we hung out with our friend Garrett the other week and we were both just like, hey, like we think you're cool. And he's like, I think you guys are cool. We had this like funny little moment, right? And I think having those acknowledgments, I think will help to bridge that gap of like awkwardness of like I want to be friends with this person, because you can have a mutual understanding that I want to bring this person into my life. Yes, we're 27, we're 30, we're 35, whatever. We just met, but that's okay because we like each other and let's explore this friendship.
Yeah. Well, I think as far as timelines go for friendships, I think, yes, like the friends you've had your entire life, they've known you at different stages of your life. But I think it's not to say like those necessarily are more important than certain people you've met throughout your life and are able to connect with. Because sometimes you just meet someone and you just connect and you just know that person.
Yeah.
And 10, 20 years of having just similar experiences doesn't always necessarily make up for that.
Yeah. I think that like one really important thing to highlight on this episode or this conversation is that change can feel so freaking weird as it's happening. You could have moments where you wake up, you're like, oh my God, how did I not talk to my friend from childhood for 2 years? It's kind of like a level of cognitive dissonance of like, am I doing something wrong? But I think the most important thing to remember, like we always say, is that of course new things in life feel scary because you haven't yet confronted them. Of course change feels weird and uncomfortable, but that's okay. Just because you don't talk to someone who you're best friends with at one point doesn't mean that that love for them isn't still in your heart. It doesn't mean that that relationship is not validated anymore. It just means that you're growing and you're peeling back the layers in your life. And naturally, And naturally, as you're peeling off the layers in your life, some things are going to shed from the past. And that's okay, right? We're growing, we're learning. I think as long as you're trusting yourself and you're understanding yourself and not saying no to change, then you're kind of going to experience it. You could experience a lot of great things that might feel weird that actually might blossom into something better than what you had in the past.
Yeah, I think acknowledging what you said again, that as change is happening, it can feel really weird, and it can catapult you backwards if you are so uncomfortable by it, where it may cause you to go and do things that in a weak moment you wouldn't otherwise be doing. Going and just like finding comfort in old friendships that might not actually be something that you want to contribute time to.
Yeah.
And knowing that it takes time and to grow into the change that you're experiencing, and that like change in your 20s is so scary. It's so uncomfortable. Like it's so you feel like the ground beneath you is spinning and being pulled, and the next day you wake up and you're like, wow, life is fantastic. Then you go to bed the next night and you're like, who am I? What have I done the last 5 years?
Last night Daisy looked at me and was like, who are you?
You know when those moments just hit and you're like, what is my life? Like, because so long we would have routine and we would see the same people every day, and you hit a point in your life where that changes and everything looks different. You're not 18 and like in your parents' house anymore.
Yeah, I mean, my sister just graduated college, and I see it now. Her and her boyfriend are kind of just like figuring out like who are our friends. Like we're not walking down the hallway anymore to see our friends. It's weird and it's isolating, but don't get discouraged, because I made tons of friends on my kickball league I joined. I think there's tons of ways. I've met people in shared Ubers. I've met people on the streets of New York City. I have met so many people. I've met people off TikTok, off Instagram. Like, you can meet people in so many different ways, but you have to take the initiative and don't be scared to. Someone has to do it.
I think also you can be questioning what your identity is and like what you like to do, but just following it and knowing it's not going to be perfect, that you might want to pursue an activity or a hobby or a class or a course of some sort that you're unsure of, but just jump into it and just start doing it, because you never know, like minds meet like minds. Like,
yeah,
just go and put yourself out there, and it can feel so uncomfortable, but you never know who you're going to meet. Maybe you won't meet anyone. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll just fall in love with something that you like doing on your own. Nonetheless, I think the stronger you know yourself, the stronger your friendships are going to be, because you're going to find people who see you as you see yourself, or you can't see yourself, but
and even if that's one person, that's okay. Yeah. Quality over quantity.
Absolutely. And I think there's just so much pressure on friendships. I think it goes back to like probably like being in school and feeling like a loser if you don't have friends.
Oh yeah.
But
popularity.
I think friendships can look so differently of people of different ages. You can find community, and I think this is something that we were talking about last night, of like the difference between friendship and community, and like how important community is, because that's really like the purpose of life, is to like have people that you care about, you're doing things for. And I think when you get into your late 20s, a lot of people like jump into like having families, because that's a source of community. That is a way of community, and like that's beautiful. And I think that it's confusing on how to find other ways to do that.
And it's not, you don't have to take the route that someone else is taking. You can find your own route.
Yeah, and I think just like trying to figure out, how do you find community? And that's something that we're still trying to figure out.
Yeah, definitely. This podcast has been community. That's one reason why we have this Discord, bring people together who like this podcast topic, right? Like,
right.
There's so many ways to do it. It could feel scary, but don't get intimidated, because we're all kind of going through this together. Like, Daisy and I are going through this. All my friends are going through this.
Every single person has experienced loss of relationship, of friendship, of confusion, of their own identity. Like, every single person, not one person hasn't thought about these things. I guarantee you.
And the second that you start thinking you're the only one is where the real anxiety comes in. So don't go down that path. Recognize that we're literally, all 8 billion people in this world probably deal with like anxiety, questioning their identity, and like a daily basis. And if not, I'm sure everyone really does. So, but the point I'm trying to make is that like, we are all in this together. We all are so similar. Our brains are wired literally like the same way.
Yep.
So of course, other people are feeling the same things as you. So don't doubt yourself, listen to yourself, and trust yourself. And as you're navigating this weird lens of friendships, try to just stay true to you and try to remember that this is just growth is part of life, change is part of life, and it's all going to work out the way that it should.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really to just tie it up one last time, at the end of the day, you are your first best friend. Like, you are the one that you can meet all of your needs. So don't mistake going and finding friends that are going to meet your needs for you, because you can meet your own needs. Mm-hmm. And once you do that, you're going to find friends naturally, because people flock to people who are naturally themselves and who are confident in themselves.
Really good point.
So love yourself first. You are your first friend, and you can meet your needs. I think that's something that's like really important to think about, and it can be uncomfortable to try and meet your own needs and work through them on your own. But once you do that, you're going to have stronger friendships, because you can communicate what you need to them. And I think that's really the most important thing of your 20s, is investing in yourself, and everything else will follow.
Always starts within. Great advice, Daisy. Yeah, I could talk about this for hours, but I think that we covered a lot of the important overarching points of this. And if you guys want to join the Discord, we could talk more about this. But this has been a really fun episode, and I guess this concludes episode 9 of season 1. As we mentioned earlier,
episode 10, fact check.
It's episode 10. Oh my God, sorry. It's late. My voice, sorry guys, if you could tell my voice is like, I don't know what's happening to it. I need to get this ready for season 2. But as always, please follow us, rate us. It really, really helps on our end. And check out our website. Subscribe to our newsletter. We're going to keep you updated on season 2. We have a lot of guests coming out. We have a lot of exciting stuff on the Wildflowers brand. So stay tuned, stay updated, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
We'll see you soon, and stay tuned on our social media so you don't miss out on season 2. Talk to you soon.